What's up, hockey fans? Happy Monday. Another incredible weekend of playoff hockey. We got 2 Game 7s to talk about. A beautiful title on today's show. Pasta La Vista to the Toronto Maple Leafs. David Pastrnak comes through in Game 7. Wyatt Johnson comes through in Game 7 again for the Dallas Stars. They move on to the second round. So much to get into, but before we do anything, this is Morning Cup of Hockey. That's Colby Cohen. I'm Jonny Lazarus. We are presented by Betway. If you're going to place a bet on Betway. Please play responsibly, and remember, you must be 19 years of age or older. Colby, what's going on, man? A lot of action, a lot to get into. How was your weekend?
I think we just have to start today and not waste any time. And
the Leafs right off the bat.
I think we do the Leafs eulogy, and we for the time being until the firings begin over the next 72 hours, we put them to bed. And we just talk about the fact that it was a good series between Boston and Toronto. And look, Toronto, they dealt with a lot of adversity in this series. There's no doubt about that. They didn't have Austin Matthews for a decent chunk of the series. They didn't have Nylander, who seemed to be the one who shows up of the three. I think that was something that I even said in the early part of the series, like, let's see if this guy's a dog, like everybody says he is this year. And he scored 3 goals in 4 games. He made big plays when needed. He told Mitch Marner to shut up on the bench, in other words. And so where does Toronto go from here? Before we talk about the Bruins and what this next series could look like, or the pasta thing, the Shaddy thing. I mean, there is a lot to unpack. A lot of stories came out of that series, but I mean, where does Toronto go from here? Because all of a sudden everyone's like, trade Marner, trade this guy. It's not that easy to trade players with no trade clauses who make $11 million in AAV or 10.93, whatever the exact number is. So what's going to happen here in Toronto over the next couple of days?
Well, I feel like the discourse I saw about the Leafs too was, Toronto played hard. They earned respect. Like, did you see a lot of that? I feel like that's what was coming out of Toronto fans on Twitter, and that's like only really where I see it. And I'm looking and reading those tweets, and I'm like, what the fuck are we talking about here? Like, Toronto now, it's basically 8 years of this where it's just disappointment after disappointment, but we're saying they earned respect. Like, is that the standard now for the Leafs, is just to not be an embarrassment? Like, is that what we're doing? I mean, I'd have to think they got a clean house, right? As far as management and coaching staff goes, this core four, whatever you want to say about them. Like, I know John Tavares talked about believing in him in his post-game comments, but I don't see any way.
I didn't see his post-game comments. What exactly did he say?
He was just saying, like, he believes in this group and he's proud of the way they played, I guess, in Game 7 and whatnot. But to me, like, I kind of am starting to look at the Leafs the same way I look at the Islanders. You're not really making a ton of changes that are necessary, and you're expecting a different result. I know the talent level is different, but it feels like the same decisions are being made about the team.
Look, I like the way that the Maple Leafs defended in this series. I actually think Tree Living did a good job. I thought Lyubushkin had a decent series. I thought Joel Edmondson was good. And I think Jake McCabe really came into his own this year in the playoffs and really settled into that role. I thought he was their most consistent player probably throughout the entire season. But what else is John Tavares going to say? First of all, he's not going to sit there and say, I don't believe in this group. We need to make changes.
Yeah. But I just saw a comment in the chat, actually. Where I think it's gone. Something about the Leafs battle level. Where to go? Oh yeah, Chef Richard. I give the Leafs credit though for their battle level. They didn't mail it in. What are they supposed to do? They're playing the fucking playoffs. They're gonna mail it in. Like that's the kind of shit I'm talking about. And Chef Richard, we love you. I'm not calling you out here, but those are the comments I'm seeing. It's like, give the Leafs credit because they played hard.
The way people are talking about it's sort of the way you talk about Lafreniere when you lower the bar for him and you make excuses for him. So I do know what you're talking about, and I've called you out on that before. Yeah. But the reality is you just can't have a bunch of $11 million players that can't score in the playoffs, because Yeah, sure. They defended harder, but did they battle that hard? Did they battle to score? Did they battle in front of the net? Did they fight to get into high danger areas? Did they work to break sort of the house protection that the Boston Bruins provide? I mean, the Bruins protect their net really well. They do a good job. Even when they're pinned in their zone, they kind of stay within their structure and they kind of fold in and they let you play around the outside. And guys like Marner, they'll do that. They'll just circle and feast around the outside, and they'll never get into the high danger areas and never get into the hard areas to score goals. So, yeah, sure, the series was close. It went to 7. I don't particularly think this Bruins team is that good either.
No.
Score. Pasta makes a big time play, but Pasta was quiet all series. And if Pasta's not scoring at will and the power play is not producing, the Bruins don't have a ton of bona fide offensive players. They just don't. They're relying on Charlie Coyle. They're relying on Trent Frederick, DeBrusk, who, he seems to step up in the playoffs, but he got quiet in the second part of the series after starting really well. So, look, I don't think this was the best version of either of these two teams.
I agree.
And again, you went to 7 games into overtime. So you obviously, did something, and it was obviously a very close series. And yeah, you give the Leafs credit for not folding and battling back. But again, it's more of the same. 2 goals a game, less than 2 goals a game for
I think 1 power play goal in the entire series
for the big time scores. You see when the game is on the line in overtime, the Bruins, they make a big time play. Look, that's the thing that nobody really has been talking about on Twitter about the overtime goal. Everybody's assigning.
What do you mean? Everyone's
blame.
Talking about it.
No, everyone is busy assigning blame on this goal.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, everybody. Whether it was Marner, whether it was Riley, whether it was whoever. But the reality is that's a big time play. Okay. Lindholm makes an incredibly smart play and he gets a perfect bounce. I mean, a perfect bounce. Butchie tweeted something, and I should have told you this, Vic, to pull it up and show, but he broke down the freeze frames of Pasta actually pointing with his stick.
Yeah.
And saying, go, go. Like, right here, you can see on the far right of the screen, Pasta is pointing like that. This is like, communication without speaking. And they tee this play up. And look, at the end of the day, Mitch Marner could have done a much better job. He could have continued to move his feet. He could have ran a little bit of interference. Okay. And he could have given.
But Marner had just hopped off the bench which people missed too. Like literally
it doesn't matter whether you just hop the bench off or not. You could have kept your feet moving. Again, I'm not saying you're tracking that guy to the top of the circle. I mean, to the crease as a winger, but I also don't understand all the people saying, oh yeah, a winger's not supposed to track him back. That's exactly what a winger does. You track back to about the hash mark. Okay. Or if you have clear possession, you go to your spot on the wall. He didn't track. You've got to keep tracking. You've got to keep moving your feet. You've got to run a little bit of separation, pick or interference. And then all of a sudden, Riley gets caught flat-footed. Samsonov gets caught flat-footed. And, plenty of blame to go around on that goal. But it's also just a really good play.
Great play.
It's a really good play by 2 really good players.
Probably the one guy in the other team you don't want to get the puck.
And Lindholm finally played a good game. He didn't have a good series at all, but he stepped up on the latter part of it. He gets that goal late to tie the game. And even though to me that was a shitty goal, I think Samsonov should have had that goal. I don't think you can let that goal in a game 7 and then recover from it. So at the end of the day, the Bruins found a way to get it done. Toronto, I think we're going to have Toronto news here over the next couple of days. The coaching staff and the players are talking today, and then management's talking later this week. The big question for me, because we know Keefe's gone, the big question is Shanahan going to continue to oversee hockey ops? Because I got to tell you, from what I hear, not only is he the president, but he is involved in every single trade. I've heard he's vetoed trades. I've heard he's spoken to agents in contract negotiations. These are not things a president generally does. A GM usually runs the day-to-day, and a president, like Joe Sakic, for example, when I saw Joe last year as president, he said, yeah, I'm involved. They keep me in the loop, but I get to play golf a lot more than when I was GM. Joe Sakic is there as a thought partner, but he's not in there meddling every day as the president of the Colorado Avalanche. And what I understand, that's exactly what Brendan Shanahan has done. So we'll wait and see what happens here over the next couple of days to really deep dive into what's this team and what Toronto is going to do moving forward. But clearly change is needed. New GM, we'll see how long his shelf life is. If they are to get a new president, you never really know what could happen with him. And then they've got some decisions to make, and I think that they'll have to tackle that and address that here in the coming months.
So the Leafs or Sheldon Keefe and Leafs players are addressing the media today at 11:30 Eastern time, and then management will address the media on Thursday. So you'll hear from the coaches, the players today, but you won't hear from upper management until later in the week. But definitely things to monitor. But yeah, Colby, I mean, you probably know more about the Shanahan situation than I would. How long has he been the president? It's been a long time, right?
I mean, look, he had Lou. It's probably been 10, 12
almost
years,
a decade,
I would
right?
guess. Because he was the one who hired Lou and then fired Lou as well, or moved on from him. I don't remember if it was a true firing or for the contract situation. But they've won
one series win,
since Shanahan overtook things. So again, if he was a president that was hands off, okay, maybe, but he's not. He's a hands-on president from everything I'm told and everything I hear from within the organization. So we'll see what happens. It's not looking good, and Toronto fans should be pissed.
Yeah, but one thing too,
you can't score 12 goals in 7 games and win. Stop blaming the D and the goaltending. The defensive group and the goaltender did their job. They did their job.
It was such a shame though that Joseph Woll couldn't play Game 7. There was no rumblings about that possibility until I feel like an hour before the game. Right? Like I didn't hear anything leading up to the game, and then I heard Samsonov was starting, and I was like, "What the fuck is happening right now?" But yeah, listen, I feel for Leafs fans. They deserve better for sure. Poor Vic, he was all sad on Saturday night.
He was at Maple Leaf Square.
Incidentally, he was at a restaurant by it. He wasn't watching the game there. And then I think on his way out, he was like in the midst of it. But
one of the things I think ESPN missed on over the weekend was after Pasta's goal, they never gave us a shot of Maple Leaf Square. Yeah. Like I think ABC dropped the ball on that one a little bit. They should have given a shot of Maple Leaf Square just to see the agony on people's faces. So look, give Boston credit. Difficult situation. They came out flat, in games 5 and 6. They really did. And it really looked like all the momentum was with Toronto. We saw Monty call out Pasta. We heard Marshy say after the game, he gave a lot of credit to Kevin Shattenkirk, who only played 10 minutes in the game, but he said he gave us a speech that, right? Yeah. Completely inspired everyone and completely settled everyone down. He grabbed everybody's attention. Not a surprising thing, for me to hear that, just because I've been around him since we're, 9 years old. We were teammates. I was the best man at his wedding, and we've celebrated a lot of great things together. So I'm just not surprised that he would have such an impact on the game with such a limited amount of ice time. He's just that type of guy. And it's funny, Butchie tweeted that it's probably his last season, and he texted me after and said, "Tell Butchie I got one more in me." All right. He wants that 1,000 game regular season marker, even though he's well cleared it. Well cleared it with playoff games. He's played quite a few, and he's won his Stanley Cup, and he's played in an Olympics and an All-Star game, but he thinks he's got some game left, and he can bring something to a team next year. So my guess would be he ends up in Tampa next year. That's just my guess, but we'll see.
I actually want to read this comment from Darcy Sagan in the chat, which I find pretty funny because I find it to be true also. Why are you both spending so much time on this game? Either team, no matter who won, will be killed by Florida. And that's the one positive, I think, if you're a Leafs fan, you get to avoid seeing them get destroyed by the Florida Panthers. Because I think,
listen, you never know.
Boston will put up a better fight than Toronto would have.
Look, you never know what's going to happen in a playoff. I mean, look, do I think Florida is going to – I think Florida wins. I think I picked Florida to win this series in 5.
I think I might have said 6.
We had to resubmit our round 2 picks for our DFO pool, but we all thought the Bruins were going to win in 5 games last year against Florida when Florida snuck into the playoffs as an 8th seed. So you just never know how a team's going to match up. I do agree with you, Darcy, that this is just a consolation prize because they're going to get their lunch eaten by Florida. But unless you get there, you never have a chance, and you never really know, and you never know who could get injured. Bob could get injured, or you just don't know. And so you can't find out unless you can find a way to get there. Winning a series in the playoffs saved a lot of people's jobs in Boston. Jim Montgomery would have been 100% let go. I think Don Sweeney would have been let go. There would have been major management, coaching staff. I think you would have seen an entirely new coaching staff there in Boston. So, the effects of that overtime goal, whether you're just scoring to go lose to Florida or not, are really big. I mean, there could have been, again, a seismic shift of coaches getting let go that could be up for other head coaching jobs. Like, there just was a lot on the line. Don Sweeney, one of the most well-respected GMs, he could have become available had they lost. And who knows what kind of domino that sets off. Teams going, you know what? We want him. Maybe we got to get rid of our guy, and we weren't going to get rid of our guy. So you just don't know really what will and won't happen. So it'll be interesting to see. But we'll talk about Florida and Boston at the end of the show when we get into our playoff preview. But look, it's another year. The memes on social media of the core 4 going golfing, being handed like sets of golf clubs. I mean, it was really good yesterday. I mean, there was a lot of really, really, really funny stuff. And one thing, Jonny, that I'm really interested to see is what was wrong with Austin Matthews, because if it wasn't head related, I think he's going to catch a lot of grief about not playing. If it was not head related, I just think
he played in game 7. I think that's going to take a little bit of heat off no matter what.
Yeah,
right?
Look, it does, but maybe not, because they lose the games, they win the games he doesn't play, and then they lose the one that he does.
Yeah, but he has nothing to do with the game that they lost. He it's not like it was his fault on anything that happened.
Yeah,
in game 7.
but you can make you're gonna have people make the argument that they played better without him.
Yeah, I said that.
Without him.
I said that.
And listen, the reality is they go and win 2 games down 3-1 without their star player, and then their star player comes back and loses, and they lose. Take with that what you will. Though that is not an opinion. That is a fact, right? Take it how you will. Do I think they're a worse team with him? No, I do not think that. But take it how you will.
But you can create the narrative, that's for sure.
I mean, look.
Also, so we'll get into more of Boston and Florida later on in the show, and I see some great comments about Boston and Florida, especially from Ben Benya. So save those comments for later on. We'll go deeper into Florida and Boston because that's the one game tonight. But Colby, any final thoughts on the Leafs before we move on here to Vegas and Dallas?
No, let's move on.
All right, so do you want to shit on me now, or how do you want to go about this? Because you were right. I said game 2 was a must-win for Vegas or for Dallas. They lost. They went down 2-0. They wind up winning the series in 7. This Dallas Stars team is legit. Jake Ottinger was incredible last night. Wyatt Johnston, his second goal in a game 7. He's only played in 2 game 7s. He's 20 years old. He scored in both of them. And Dallas just – they are the Panthers of the East, right? They play physical. They have skill. They're gritty. They work their bags off. They block shots. They do a little bit of everything. And, this team has no holes. So what did you think of game 7 last night? Did you think that Vegas had a shot? Because it looked like there was a couple late chances there where, that last 2 minutes, that's Colby Cohen hockey, 1-goal game, low scoring, tons of action. And Vegas just couldn't get it done.
Yeah. So what I would say about that game is that's what the playoffs is supposed to look like. Okay. Because you had a hockey game that was, a 2-1 game 7, and it wasn't a 2-1 game where you had 2 teams sitting in the neutral zone, not forechecking. I mean, there were chances, there were, plays. I mean, Alex Pietrangelo, I kind of wanted to start there. Actually, I really didn't like the series of Alex Pietrangelo. I just didn't think he was good enough. I thought he played a little bit casual and a little bit careless with the puck. There were a couple of plays last night. There was one right in front of his net where he just gets stationary and tries to make a play right in front of his net, almost ends up in the back of his net. There was another couple times where he kind of carelessly flung pucks into the middle. I thought on the power play, he was making incredibly sort of slow and almost just he's just a little bit of watching his passes, telegraphing pucks. He just didn't seem all that dialed into the playoffs. And, the other thing that was sort of interesting to me, and I know I'm jumping around here, was watching Bruce Cassidy talk to the media in his post-game press conference. And a huge difference I saw in him than I kind of expected. He was like, I want to give a lot of credit to our guys. We had 9 in-season surgeries. Guys were basically glued together. They battled hard. It wasn't Bruce Cassidy like to me. He's not the guy to ever say those types of things. I guess now that he's won a cup, maybe that kind of mellows you out a little bit as a head coach. And I just wonder if that was kind of the attitude of the whole team. Like, they were really good. And let's say they gave 100% effort. They probably needed to go to 110%. And they just didn't have it. They showed the Tomas Hertl clip where he was, pushing for positioning in front of the net. And he just doesn't really look like he's giving that extra effort to get in front of Ottinger late in the game, create a screen, create a goal opportunity on a slot shot. So
that late one, right? Hurdle's like a little bit off to the side. I know they showed that.
Just doesn't that's what I'm talking about. So I'm just, after hearing Bruce Cassidy talk and seeing the way Pietrangelo played and seeing the stuff with Hertl, I wonder if that sort of we won. So we don't necessarily need to go 110%. Like 100%'s enough, and 100%'s not enough this time of year. So that kind of surprised me about Vegas. And I think that's probably one of the reasons that, they were up 2-0 in a series and they couldn't get it done. I mean, that's not good, and I would just say this to Bruce Cassidy, who I did not get along with when I played for him. I mean, I think he's a great coach, but we did not get along. Don't rest your laurels, bud. Like, the Vegas Golden Knights management team and ownership is ruthless. I mean, you win a cup for them and then you go out in the first round. You better get past the first round next year or they're going to get horny to make changes. That's how they operate out there in Vegas. And I doubt, Bruce Cassidy, John Stevens will be complacent because they're excellent coaches. But I would think this summer will be a big sort of, okay, time to wake back up. The cup is now a full year out. We are no longer the defending Stanley Cup champions. And I work in Vegas where it's, what have you done for me lately? So that was an awesome game, though. I really liked the way guys played in that game. I thought that obviously Wyatt Johnson, another game 7, that goal that he scored, that shot was perfect. I mean, that was,
but also everything. Shot. Dude, he does everything. He's a fucking gamer. Like, you watch him, he's blocking shots, he's throwing reverse hits. He's got a little bit of, snarl in his game, right? Like someone who can flip that switch when it means the most. And that's something that you don't necessarily see in a kid who's 20 years old. And he slips in the first round. Like, Dallas picks him up a little bit later. And I think a lot of GMs are scratching their heads right now why they pass up what.
So we have a comment in the chat from Ben Benya that said, "Do you want to shit on me now?"
Yeah, I saw that.
Jonny with no context. Would you like to refresh the context to that statement so people don't think that we have some weird cult ritual going on?
I thought I said it right after because I told you that game 2 was a must win.
Why don't you just give all the context? Go ahead.
So Colby and I were talking about this series after game 1 when Vegas beat Dallas on the road. And I said, game 2 was a must win for Dallas. They can't go back to Vegas down 2-0. Colby said, you're fucking crazy. Like, going down 2-0 is not the end of the series.
I didn't actually say you're fucking crazy. I said, I'm not agreeable to that statement.
It was implied.
And then people, well, yes. And then people were commenting, Colby's just never agreeable about anything. He's just not agreeing with you to do it. And I'm like, no, that's truly how I felt in the moment. I was not agreeable to that statement because I don't know why you would ever panic. Even if you're Vegas, why would you panic down 0-2? Look at your rosters. You have the most complete rosters in the NHL, uh, period, with Florida probably. So, the context was we get into a pretty good argument. We go back and forth for probably 10 or 12 minutes explaining why one of us thinks it's a must win. And I'm sitting there saying it's not a must win. You look at how good this team was. You look at how deep they are down the middle. You look at their goaltender who could get hot and get on a roll, which Ottinger did because he wasn't great early in the series. He was just okay. He wasn't bad. And, that's the argument that we got into. And then we watched this unfold over the next 6 games. Jonny said there's no chance in hell that Dallas can win 4 out of 5 against the Vegas Golden Knights. And I said, okay, well, I guess we'll just have to see. And this was at 1-0, by the way. This was not at 2-0. This was at 1-0.
Yeah.
He's ringing alarm bells. And
yeah, but it's not like I say this about any 2-0, 1-0 series. I just felt strongly about Vegas. That was really it for me. Like I thought Vegas was a very good team and a team that you can't afford to go down 2-0 to, no matter who you are, with the series going back on their home ice. And I would say the same thing again if I was put in that situation.
But the reason I just draw on personal experience, seriously, I draw on personal experience being on a team that came back from 0-2 twice on a Stanley Cup run. So even against Vancouver, that was, Vancouver was the favorite in that series against us in 2011. They were the favorite. There was no odds. We weren't sports betting was not. Go ahead.
No, we got a comment. Richard Saunders, as a Stars fan, I thought it was over after game 2.
Right, but what I'm telling you guys is, did I play in the series? No, I did not play in the Stanley Cup Finals. Okay, I was a healthy scratch every night, but just being in the locker room and looking at who we had and looking at the veteran leadership and the veteran presence that we have. And I looked at the fact that we had Tim Thomas in goal. And I'd say, Jake Ottinger is a guy that if Dallas wins the Stanley Cup would probably be in the Conn Smythe conversation, if he plays like he did the second half of the series now for the next couple of rounds. And I just think that when you go down 0-2, it's obviously a mountain, but you're basically one win away, which you're going to get the next win usually. It's so rare a good team loses 3 in a row. Like a good team. We're not talking Capitals, Rangers here. We're talking 2 elite level teams. Okay. To beat an elite team 3 times in a row is so difficult. So then you get a series to 2-1 and you're an overtime bounce away from evening up the series. And that's just why I do not believe you're in a must win situation. Now, look, going down 0-3, there's where I'm going to say, okay, you're down 0-2. I'm saying when you're down 0-2, you cannot go to 0-3. That's where I will save the must-win conversation. So that's what happened in the beginning of the series. We had our argument. I think I was actually wearing a similar outfit when we had that argument with the Daily Face-Off hoodie and the hat.
You wear this 2 days a week.
You reposted, you reposted it last night and reminded me about it. But that's what Jonny is talking about. And thank God, because I have Dallas going all the way to the Cup Finals. So I was a little nervous about that. That my 2 Cup teams are going to be out in round 1 because I think I picked Tampa as well. I don't remember if I have them losing in the finals or not in the DFO pool. Losing in the Eastern or not. But I know that I had them at least going to the Eastern Finals and they lost. So this series was the one to me, Jonny, that delivered as much as the Boston-Toronto series.
Yeah, but the Boston-Toronto series, I feel like we're saying it delivered because it got to 7, but every single game in this series was way more entertaining than every single game of the Boston-Toronto series. Like if you really look at it game to game, the Boston-Toronto series wasn't really that great, in my opinion. Where this Dallas-Vegas series, every game, fucking phenomenal. You agree or disagree?
I think that the Vegas Dallas series was the best series. Yes.
Yeah. But like
Yeah.
to compare the two and say they were similar, just because they both won 7, I
Well, I
still
think there
think
was a lot of theatrics and a lot of
the
drama
off
in the
ice drama in
Boston
Toronto Boston was
in
better than
in
the
the
on ice.
in the Toronto Boston
Yeah.
series. I think that made it interesting. I think the fan bases, made it interesting. I think some of the discourse of like coaches calling out players, you know, people calling for people's jobs. Like there was a lot more drama around the Boston Toronto series. So I do think that, that probably made the games feel better than they were. But look, it was a tight series. I mean, the games were very tight.
Yeah.
Like 5, 6, and 7. Things got really tight out there. They really did. And so I think it was not quite as good as Dallas Vegas, but I do still think it was a good series.
Great series. Great series. All right. So let's get into the first game of the second round, which was yesterday afternoon. New York Rangers, Carolina Hurricanes. I actually want to let you start, so there's no bias or homer, anything from me. What did you make of that game? And then I will answer you.
Look, I think the Rangers got off to a great start. I really do. I think they jumped on them early. I think they took advantage of being at home. I think that they kind of quelled any worries that they would be rusty, having had a number of days without a game.
Well, both teams
Um,
had, 5 to 7 days.
But they looked a hell of a lot better in the first 8 minutes of the game than Carolina. Carolina started the game very sleepy, very loose defensively. Rod Brindamore not real happy. Couple of penalties.
Well, also
I
to
think
that point, this was Carolina's first time opening up a playoff series on the road since 2019. They've been the home team in every single playoff series they've been in the playoffs for 5 years. Not counting the bubble, but this was unfamiliar territory for the Carolina Hurricanes. You think about how strong they usually are in the beginning of a series, and a lot of that has to do with them being on home ice to start it. Just wanted to put that comment in there as well, because people don't really realize that.
yeah. So I thought the Rangers had a killer instinct on the power play, and I think that was the difference in the game, because I don't think the Rangers necessarily outplayed Carolina all game. I think Carolina actually possessed the puck a little bit more than they did, but I don't think they got to the grade A areas as much as they normally do until late in the game.
Yeah.
I think that you look at. Here's the other thing I will say. I don't think either goaltender was great yesterday, by the way. I don't like the way Anderson played first and foremost, but I didn't love Shesterkin either. And I know it didn't cost them and they won and you get the win, but he whiffed on one in the first period with his glove.
Yeah.
And I was like,
Yeah.
whoa. I
That was
was like,
scary.
that's a little concerning, right? And I didn't love the goal, the late goal, the 5-hole goal. Like I would like to see him come up with that
I
save.
mean, dude, that's a breakaway.
I get it, but again, like I'd like to see him in that juncture of a game. I'd like to see him. I'm not saying it was a bad goal.
Yeah.
Again, I'm saying I'd like to see him come up with that save. I'd like to see him shut the door there and not let that game get all that close. So all I'm saying is I think Anderson gave you a C type of performance, and I think Igor probably gave you a B plus. Is that fair?
Yeah.
Maybe an A minus, but I would rather see these two goalies stand on their head and make it really difficult. But the Ranger power play, that's Vinny Trocheck and the Ranger power play were the difference yesterday. I know Zibanejad scored a couple of goals and had a good game, but even, Panarin's game winner, I mean, that was a soft goal, but this is hard to defend, man. I mean, this is 3 passes without a stick handle. If you get on a power play situation and you're able to execute 3 passes through the box without one stick handle, that's problematic. And I know Rod Brindamore and his group will go to the drawing board because their penalty kill was atrocious yesterday, and that was a big difference.
Well, I think you got to credit the Rangers video staff too, and just the way that they approach the game, because you look at that first power play opportunity and you look at how high the Rangers are in the zone. Panarin comes out so high because the Rangers know how aggressive that Carolina Hurricanes PK is. So you spread the zone out a little bit, you create some more 2-on-1s down low, 3-on-2s. The odd man, not odd man rushes, but the odd man scenarios. And look how high all the Hurricanes players are. There's 3 guys above the dots. So the Rangers, credit to them. They watched the video. They knew the game plan going in on their power play, and they scored 2 power play goals. They only had 2 in the game in a combined 23 seconds. I think the first one was 9, the second one was 14, or maybe it's flip-flopped, but they knew exactly what to expect from Carolina's PK. And, going into this series, this is kind of the narrative that was expected. The Rangers power play is going to set them up for success against Carolina, right? The Hurricanes will be the better 5-on-5 team. The Rangers power play could be the difference. But while it was the difference in this game, I still think the Rangers were very strong at 5-on-5.
Yeah,
Like,
listen, I think this is the first
but the power
Rangers
play shouldn't take
team.
away from that.
No, I think this is the first Rangers team that has the structure to go the distance and beat Carolina. I picked the Rangers. Full disclosure here. I picked the New York Rangers to win this series. I think that a lot of people think it's going to be the other way around. I just think that when you watch the Rangers in the neutral zone and you watch the way they play around their net, and look, you've got guys who are going to, Fox will get caught here and again trying to make plays and, being up the ice. And I know they got a little sleepy on that, the third goal.
The Nature's goal.
Fox gets caught out a little bit wide, I think it was. Just a little bit outside the dots. But it's not going to happen that often to him. He's so smart. His body positioning is always so good. And then, look, you're going to get a big push. A team like Carolina is never going to go away. So you're getting a big push at some point. And the Rangers were able to fend the push off. Yeah, they give up a goal late, and then they kill it off the rest of the way, and they don't give up that game time goal. So this is going to be a really good series. I mean, this has the makings of going 7. Although I do think I picked Rangers in 6. I want to say, but I'm not positive. I forget. We had to submit those a couple of days ago with all the different scenarios, so we had to submit who we thought if it was this way, who we thought if it was that way. So we submitted quite a bit of things, quite a bit of different options and opportunities. But, we'll see what happens here. Let me ask you a question. You knew this question would come.
Is this the D'Angelo penalty?
No. Well, actually, you know what? let's just talk. Well, I was going to talk to you about Rempe a little bit. And that kind of falls into it. Because I know I texted you and gave you shit, and I was like, oh, Rempe penalty. He's a liability. He can't play. Yeah. It was a bad call. I didn't like that call.
Terrible call.
But I also didn't like the Tony DeAngelo call whatsoever. I did not think that warranted 2 minutes. I thought that was a good hit. I thought he was stronger, and he caught who did he catch there? Was it Cooley? Cooley, yeah, he catches him off guard, and listen, Tony's strong. I mean, he's a strong guy. He's always been that way. He's smaller. He's got a low center of gravity. He's very built as a player, and I thought that was a completely clean hit. And I just hope they don't take the physicality out of the series by overcalling and having the power plays kind of rule the roost in this series. But I thought that that's a playoff hit to me right there, and I know every snowflake blue check writer in hockey wants to give Tony DeAngelo a 10-minute major and throw him out of the league for that hit because of who his political affiliation is, which is ridiculous.
Seeing it live, before I saw a replay, it looked bad. It did. And remember, I react before I really have a chance to see replays, but even after I saw the replay, I thought his arm goes fully through Cooley's face.
Yeah,
Vic, can I see it one more time?
I don't have an issue. I think this is a good.
Like, his elbow is tucked. I'll give him that, but it's like, come on.
Cooley's bent down there, man, and Cooley's getting spun around. And again, that to me, that goes through the body. That's a good hockey hit. Cooley was fine. I just, again, and I like Rod Brindamore's. The writers after the game are asking Brindamore about his undisciplined player. And again, these people have an agenda. They do not like him because he's outwardly on what they deem the wrong side of politics is. And so they will go after him for any and everything that he does on the ice, which is just embarrassing because these people are supposed to be journalists. But I liked that hit. I liked the physical play, and I like what he brings to that team when he plays. He makes plays. He creates offense. He moves the puck. And I hope
he's making the series very interesting too, because Ranger fans love going at him, and he was yapping. He was yapping with Rempe and Trocheck.
And you know what? He'll go at guys and like. But if you ask Trocheck after the series, he'll tell you like he probably loves them. Like all the guys that played with him love him. All of his teammates love him. So I just hope the officiating keeps the physicality in this series because I do think that these are two teams that feel primed to win a Stanley Cup, right? And I think they want to really flex now that they're playing very difficult opponent in round two. I mean, these are two premier teams squaring off in round two with serious Stanley Cup allegations, or I said allegations,
Yeah.
aspirations.
Let me ask you a question before we kind of move on to the next topic here. And I don't want to answer this again because I know sometimes the Ranger fan in me can come out a little bit more, but when thinking about this series, underdog, versus the favorite and whatnot, Carolina was favorited by everyone in this series, by the books, by a lot of the writers. The Hurricanes are the analytical darlings. But have you ever seen, and President's Trophy, whatever, but have you seen a President's Trophy winning team that swept in the first round ever an underdog in a second round? Like, to me, that's just crazy. Take out the 5-on-5, take out the power play, take out the goaltending. Like, that alone to me seems a little bit wild that the
Are you
Rangers
saying, are they in the odds makers?
are the underdog. They were the underdog in this series.
Well, it's not surprising to me because when you look at the odds to win a cup, Carolina's like
They're
what,
the favorite
third?
by most people.
Oh yeah. So which I've never really subscribed to. Like,
Yeah.
I do not see the Carolina Hurricanes. Let's say they beat the Rangers. I don't see them beating Florida.
Even Boston.
It's like, well, I don't know.
I'm taking Swayman over Anderson, over Kochetkov.
Yeah, we'll see. Listen, that looks like it could be the question mark in goal. And I don't think Carolina had great goaltending in round one either. They had good goaltending, but I don't think they had great goaltending. I also think the Rod Brind'Amour situation, it's silly that that's lingering over that team. I really do. I think that just creates a question that people have to answer when it's unnecessary. I do think it was interesting how that report got leaked out to the media, and then like within a day, Waddell and more reports were saying they were very close to an agreement. I wouldn't be shocked if maybe the Brind'Amour camp leaked that to put some pressure on the Hurricanes. I'm not really sure. It doesn't seem like Rod's style, but maybe his agent did that. But yeah, look, it definitely is interesting that the Rangers seem to not be getting a ton of respect. And I think we covered this after the first round that, like, were people sort of like, oh, the Rangers swept, but it was ugly. And, and we're like, yeah, but they swept. They swept a team in the playoffs, right?
Yeah.
Like, they took care of business. How often do you see a 1-versus-8 matchup where the 8 seed at least gets a game, at least pushes it to 5, make them travel a little bit extra. But look, the Rangers came out on home ice last night or yesterday, late in the day. They got out to a hot start. Their power play's clicking. You got to hope that continues. And, back to my sort of when we were talking about the physicality, though, what do you think? Is Matt Rempe going to be able to have an impact on this series, do you think? And is he an every game player in this series? Because he played game one, which again,
and he played fine.
We were talking about, what were his minutes last night?
We joked with Panarin in the locker room after the game. Rempe had one more second of ice time in the first period than Panarin did, which is pretty funny. I forgot what Artemi said right after, but he made some sort of joke and laughed about it. But listen, like, the guy is effective and impactful, and people just have to accept it now. We can't have this conversation every round. Is Matt Rempe going to have an impact on this? Like, just accept the fact that the kid is, and the call, the penalty.
Well, I disagree with you because he's so new. So you can keep asking the question. There isn't a proven track record here. It's a very, very small track record. So I think it's a completely fair question to ask. When he's not playing a lot, what were his minutes? Vic, can you look up his minutes and drop them in our chat for us? Because I didn't look those up. Normally I would have had those written down. But I thought it was a bad call against him.
Terrible.
I really did. I thought that was probably a situation where they called the result and not the penalty. They see the goaltender fall and they just assume with reputation and whatnot. But I also thought it was interesting that Rempe was getting into Slavin's face a little bit, as if he's saying to him, like maybe challenging Jacob Slavin a little bit in front of the net, which I'm like, I don't think Jacob Slavin, is going to give you that time of day there. I don't think that's something he will do. So Rempe played 7 minutes in the game.
Yeah.
And
And
again,
didn't play in the third.
didn't have a shift in the third period. So how impactful? Like I'm being serious here.
Yeah.
You do need, you see year in and year out. PK Subban was talking about it on ABC yesterday, how hard Daniel Paille, Sean Thornton, and Greg Campbell, the Bruins fourth line, the Merlot line, how hard they were to play against in the Stanley Cup playoffs in 2011 and all the other years they played against each other. Fourth lines can be really impactful in a series. And so if you're only getting 7 minutes out of Rempe, I think it's a fair question to ask, Jonny. Like, how much of an impact can he really have in this series when there's really not, there's no dance partners for him?
Yeah. Listen, I think talking about a team that's won 5 straight games in the playoffs, like why change something right now? There's no reason to. I'm a big, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Like, these guys have been playing well. The fourth line I thought was good again yesterday. And Pierre Laviolette doesn't mind double shifting guys. Will Cooley got a couple double shifts yesterday. And I see people in the chat saying like you can't have a player like missing 1/3 of the game, basically, right? Like you need all 4 lines in the third period. But
you'd like, look, I think in an ideal world, if you're going to play a 7-game series, you would like to be able to give your fourth line 12 to 13 minutes. I think.
But yesterday also the ice time, because there was, the Rangers,
a lot of
so
special
many
teams.
PKs,
a lot of special teams. I know. So that throws off the ice time. And JE in the chat said 19-3-1, boys. That's a Trek record, Colby. I don't agree with you. I think that's a very small body of work in the grand scheme of things. Like, I hear you, bud, but you're also talking about a team that's winning when he's averaging less than 5 minutes of ice time throughout his career. I mean, he's averaging 4 and high change in ice time in his career. So let's just pump the brakes on that. I think Ben Benya is asking the right question in the chat.
Ben Benya's been on fire today.
If Hedl is healthy, do you sit Rempe, and what do you do with Hedl? And obviously Roslovic played well in the top 6 yesterday.
Yeah.
Do you wait for Roslovic's play to drop off a little and then you come to Hedl if you have to? I mean, I do think the farther along playoffs gets without Phil Hedl playing, I think it becomes harder and harder to put him in the lineup.
I think there has to be something deeper, because to me, if Hedl is cleared to play, has no limitations on practice, then why isn't he in the lineup? Right? Because he clearly makes your team better. And I don't care what anyone says that the Rangers are winning without him. There's got to be something going on, right? Because why else would he not be in the lineup? Right, Colby?
Yeah, I mean, listen, we all have to assume it's health related, but also let me ask you this question: how much hockey has he missed?
He played 10 games. He played the first 10 games of the season since November 2nd.
He basically missed 7 months, 8
November
months.
2nd.
Right. Mm-hmm. So look, maybe they're still trying to work him in to game shape. How long? So here's my next question for you. How long has he been taking contact in practice, roughly?
Since like the last week of the regular season. So now like 2-3 weeks.
Okay. So they could be, really, really trying to get him back up to speed. And remember, there's not a lot of practice days. There's not a lot of physical practice days, especially in the playoffs. There's really none. So we don't know what he's doing on the non-game, on the non-practice days. We know he's probably on the ice working with the skills coaches and whoever else. So they could just be trying to get him back up to speed. Missing 7-8 months of hockey is an eternity. It really is, especially when he came back and then he got hurt right away when he came back the first time in practice. And so maybe they're just taking a super cautious, build him up type of approach. So when he gets back into the lineup, he can play. Have they said if he is an option? Like what kind of language have they used when talking about him in, whether it's been the coaches or the media team?
They're not answering anything in regards to him. They're
not.
Nothing. Also, I want to address MYR Marine goes, Jonny goes immediately from saying they won 5 playoff games in a row, you don't change it, to Hedl must be in. And that's a different narrative, because I'm saying, why take Rempe out to put Brodzinski in? That's like a lateral, move to make when you have Hedl, who could be a top 6 center in the NHL. He was slotted in as a second line center when he was playing this year. That's just sitting out if he's fully healthy right now, ready to get in. So that's a different change that you're making. Just like Austin Matthews, if he can play, you're going to play him even though you won 2 games in a row, right? Like that's kind of what I'm saying. It's not so comparable taking out Rempe and putting in Brodzinski as opposed to slotting in Hedl if he's healthy and ready to go. And Hedl for sure makes your team better. Am I wrong in saying that?
No, listen, and there's a track record of Hedl playing well in the playoffs, and as a player, you can draw on that. Even if you haven't played, you're going in with a little bit of extra confidence just because you know you've done it before in the playoffs and you've had good playoff runs. JE in the chat is asking us if we think the Tony DeAngelo hit was high. Yeah, so JE, you got to rewind a little bit because we spent a little bit of time on that, but I had no issues with the hit. Jonny wanted to give him 20 to life with no probation. We settled at the fact that checking is allowed in hockey. So
yeah. Alex Pay is saying, I love Phil, but he is not a top 6 center in the NHL, LMAO. He was literally slotted in with Lafreniere and Panarin to start the season, got hurt, and then Trocheck took that spot. Literally playing second line, top 6.
Right, but playing second line, Jonny, or being slotted in and then doing it for 82
and this was the first year. Right. This was the first year of his career where he was put in that position.
Yeah. Yeah, look, I think what I would say about Hedl is...
I'm not saying he's a top 20 center in the NHL.
What I would say about Hedl is that, we need to see more. I don't think we're ready to say exactly what he is in the NHL because we've seen flashes.
Yeah.
Okay. And we've seen major development strides.
This was the year for him to do it.
And we've seen him do it in playoffs. So now what I think everybody needs to see is an 82 game consistency of like, okay, we know you're not going to have your A game every night, but we talk about on this show for the people that are with us every day, what's your B game? What are you doing on the nights where you're not scoring or creating or making plays? How are you sort of curtailing your peaks and valleys, right? A lot of young players early on are like this. They're riding these massive peaks and valleys. But once you get to a certain point, it's more, where they're like wiggles instead of valleys, right? And I think that's really important. And I think this was sort of the year to see that for Hedl. I think that gets moved to next year. I mean, how old is Hedl? 24? 24 years old. Okay. So still a young guy, still sort of figuring it out. We give Lafreniere a free pass on the fact that it's his 4th year in the NHL. Right. And we're saying he still has way, way more to give and way, way more to go. So I think you have to give Hedl similar considerations, especially when you miss an entire season due to injury. So I hope he gets back in and plays, though. Like, I've always liked him as a player. He's always excited me, but he's always left me wanting a little bit more. So I'd love to see him get in the playoffs and help this Rangers team. I think if he's healthy, they are a better team. I think he's a whole nother threat in the bottom 6 of your lineup, and he gives you another option on the second power play group, another option at 6-on-5 if you need a goal. So
he probably wouldn't be out there for 6-on-5, but
I'm just saying another option. That's all I'm saying, right? At the end of a game, you never know what the circumstance is. If a team doesn't have their timeout, guys can be tired. He's just another option, right? It's good to have options in the playoffs. Imagine somebody goes down. Look at the other series that have all been dealing with injuries. Bennett's was out. You saw what happened in Toronto, half their roster and good players were out. So I think options are a really nice thing to have in the playoffs.
And just the last thing we'll say on it too, Calvin Hobbs. I understand hindsight is 2020, but did it ever make sense to put him above Trocheck? And just talking about that particularly last year, Trocheck and Panarin played together for the majority of the season. They were fine. They weren't so exceptional. This year, the first 10 games, Panarin point in every game. Lafreniere doing well. Hedl had 6 assists in 10 games. Like, they were playing well. And Vinny Trocheck can be more of that responsible shutdown checking type role. More experience than Hedl as well. So I think it just made sense for Trocheck to fall down in that spot.
He's also a 31-year-old vet at this point who's been paid twice. Okay, who's confident, who's older. Who's been in these situations
exactly
more.
What I was saying.
It's like. It's you're not comparing apples to apples. And I'll just tell you this about Trocheck, because we both love Vinny Trocheck.
Yeah.
And so I played
deserves way more recognition nationally.
I played with Vinny in the American League, his rookie year, which was probably like my 4th, 5th year in pro playing in the American League, basically. And you could just tell. I mean, I remember my first practice. We were out in San Antonio, it was the Panthers American League team at the time, and you could just tell that he had more skill and more speed than everybody else. First practice. I didn't know Vinny, even though he's an American. He went through the OHL. He was not a college player. So I don't really know a whole lot about him. I know he played in the World Junior and this and that, but I just remember being like, holy shit, this kid, there's always kids in the American League that you watch and practice in games and you're like, yeah, they don't belong here. They just don't. They're better than the rest. And Vinny was that type of guy. I think for Vinny, after the first couple of games that I was there for watching him, I said, all right, this guy's got a ton of skill, but he plays a little light. He just didn't play heavy. He didn't play heavy on his stick. He wasn't heavy in the draws. He wasn't heavy along the walls. Like we talked about with Andrew Raycroft last year with Brad Marchand and Pasta, these highly skilled players that are heavy in battles. Patrice Bergeron and Krejci were great examples of that with Boston. And the minute Vinny sort of leaned in and he really started to play a little bit heavier and with a little bit more, fuck you to his game, he just, everything opened up for him offensively, defensively. And now, I mean, you make the argument he's one of their most important players.
Well, I'm so happy you said that, because I asked you this question before the playoffs started, and I want to ask it to you again. Vinny Trocheck has been a guy that we've been praising on the show now for about 2 weeks. I asked you,
I think longer than 2 weeks, by the way.
No,
We've been
but
talking about him all year.
Of course, but like praising him, pretty highly for the last 2 weeks. I asked you before the playoffs started, if the Rangers are going to go on a deep run, can Vinny Trocheck be that Braden Point type of player for them? Now that you've seen him play 5 games, 4 goals, 4 assists in those 5 games, has your mind changed at all? Because you said no originally.
Yeah, I said not the same caliber, and I didn't see the away from the puck physicality and the willingness to basically go and stand between the hash marks and take a beating while scoring a goal. I didn't know if he had that in him. He had it in him yesterday. Okay. He did. He did. I mean, he played a Braden Point style of hockey yesterday. Now I need to see more, before I do that, just because I mean, Braden Point's got multiple Stanley Cups. Braden Point has been, scoring.
Hence why 90, I said could
90 plus points. And, he's been a major playoff performer for, a number of years for the Tampa Bay Lightning. But I will tell you this, I'm definitely rethinking my answer when I said no, because like I said, yesterday, he scores a goal on top of the paint. Okay. It's a hard area to score. You're whacking. That puck gets put through on that little bumper play, and then it comes back over to him and he doesn't peel off. He stays on top of the crease. You just see like the habits for Trocheck. You can really just see like he's got good habits around the net offensively and defensively. And when you have a player that's going out on the ice up a goal or down a goal, very valuable. Really. Yeah. Even seeing his post-game scrum, he just looks older. He looks a little more beat up in the face. He looks more nicked up. His beard is better, even though he's always had a great muzzy. Yeah. You just see sort of, look, he's 31 now. He's not a spring chicken by athletic terminology anymore. He's not a kid. He's 31. He's got 5 years left on his contract that takes him to 36. This could be his last contract, so good for him for rising to the occasion in game 1, because he was the best player on the ice, I thought. And I know Zibanejad had the goal, but he was the best player to me yesterday on the ice, especially for the Rangers.
I think he has been in every game, all 5 games. And Pierre Laviolette has said it. Vinny Trocheck is the first guy out the door, touches our game in every single area. Power play, PK, 6 on 5.
Do you remember earlier this year when you wanted Lafreniere to go on the top power play for him?
I don't remember saying that.
You did.
I really don't. I remember saying I want Lafreniere on the top power play. And
when I started pressing you on that, You were
I
like,
don't know who else you take off. Like,
but how can you take him off?
I don't know. It's such a tough answer.
Let me ask you a question
good
about
problem to have.
Lafreniere before we get into Proraso.
Okay.
Um,
Yeah, because we got to keep the show moving. We've done a lot on the Rangers.
He's been pretty quiet in the playoffs.
I thought yesterday was his best game in the playoffs so far. But
yes. He's not like he found a B game yesterday because he was physical in game 1 against Washington, but then he was not real physical in game 2, 3,
you
and
haven't
4.
seen the flair. You haven't seen the flair that you saw.
I didn't. But yesterday he sort of picked the physicality back up a little, and he was effective on the forecheck.
Made a fucking hell of a play on the game-winning goal. He picks the pocket of, I forget which Hurricane it is, and then kicks the puck over to Panarin, and Panarin comes in and scores. Lafreniere makes that play on the back check,
which was similar to the play he made in game 1.
Yeah.
On whatever that's
different scenarios. This
but
is
still, he goes in, he creates a turnover, he dishes a quick play, and then they benefit and score a goal off of it.
Yeah.
But he's been quiet. Like
quiet, but
quiet.
Hey, you said even when you're quiet, you got to find a way to put up points. He's been quiet. He's got 5 assists in 5 games. So
he had 4 points in the first round, and I said this to you. He had all secondary assists. The only primary assist he had was on the empty net goal.
Yeah,
was on the empty netter. But I then said to you exactly that.
Yep.
If you want to score 100 points in the NHL, when you have a 5-game sleep streak, you still need 5 points. So I'll give him that. He's got 5 assists, but he has not been really impactful in the playoffs for the Rangers.
All right, yeah, we got to move on because Weinberg 85 goes, I have stumbled across Morning Cup of Rangers. So sorry for all the Rangers talk. For anyone who's been following us the whole time.
We spent 20 plus minutes talking about the Bruins in Toronto too.
Yeah. And we're going to do Bruins, Florida right now. But before we do that, we got to get into our Parasso playoff preview presented by Parasso, the most complete choice for shaving and beard care. Made in Italy since 1948, Parasso has been a staple of Italian culture and barbershops globally for 4 generations. So get 15% off at parasso-usa.com with our promo code hockey15. That's all caps, hockey15. I actually saw the chat talking about playoff beards a little bit earlier, saying, can you shave the neck? Does that count in playoff beards? I'm pretty sure you just can't touch anything. But I will say I'm cheating a bit because I'm shaving my neck. I don't play on any NHL team, but I'm growing out my playoff beard. But again, I'm still trying to find a wife in New York City, so I'm going to shave my neck and look a little bit cleaner. And Vic goes, can I shave my head? Yes, Vic, you can. But Colby, let's get into Florida and Boston because we weren't really giving Boston enough credit, I think, in this series. Like off the top of the show, we were talking about them. The Bruins can definitely win this one, but I think it's pretty clear and well-deserved that Florida is a heavy favorite going into this series.
Well, look, anybody can win in a series. You never know what's going to happen. But I would say it's highly, highly unlikely that the Bruins are going to win this series. I just don't think that they have enough scoring. Look at how difficult it was for Boston to score goals against Toronto. And now you look at the way that Florida defends and the talent that they have offensively and defensively. This is going to be a very difficult series for the Boston Bruins to score goals. And then you've got Bob, who played out of his mind in round 1, other than the one game when Tampa lit him up for 6, although I don't think a lot of those goals were his fault. I think the Bruins are going to have a very difficult time in this series. I just don't see, the Bruins creating enough offensive pressure on Florida to be able to get enough by Bob and enough by that stacked defensive group that the Panthers have to win hockey games. So I think that Florida is going to make easy work of this series.
One thing I want to point out, in the regular season series, Boston won all 4 games. 2 of them were overtime games. One of them was a 1-goal game. The other one was 3-1. So very tight games.
You know what happened in the Winnipeg, Colorado regular season?
No, I know. That was my next point. The regular season does not matter at all.
So especially for playoff teams that start the year with true aspirations like Florida did. Florida's better this year than they were last year. They are. And so I don't see how Boston is going to generate enough. And, you've got this rest versus rust storyline. Florida hasn't played since the 29th, so it's been about a week since they've played a game. So maybe, the Bruins can jump on them early. Maybe Pasta gets himself going a little bit, but it's only going to get harder for Boston. And Boston had a very difficult time scoring against, B-level goaltending in the Toronto series.
You good, dude? What's going on over there?
I've got the hiccups a little bit. I think a big question about this series to start game one is, what do you do in goal? I think that's the big question. And after Jeremy Swayman just had a Conn Smythe level series, a lot of people are calling for Ullmark in game one, thinking you got to get Jeremy Swayman a little bit of rest. And you got to give him a chance to recalibrate, because you're going to need him to basically stand on his head. And you're going into Florida a game in game one. You're not expected to win game one. You'd like to get game two and get a split, but you do have Linus Ullmark, who's a pretty capable guy. So what are you doing? Are you starting Ullmark?
I'm all for starting Ullmark in game one. Like you said, give Swayman a little extra rest before game two. Game one is not a must win. No. So I think you give Ullmark the chance. And listen, this is a guy.
Look at you. You're growing. You're growing as a person, because I'm surprised you don't.
Because I said game one isn't a must win.
Yeah, look, I'm saying you're growing. Good job.
Yeah, thanks, appreciate it. Snaps to me. But I think in this case, you have a guy. People forget Linus Ullmark is a fucking competitor. He won the Vezina last year. This isn't a backup goalie that you're throwing in and it's just we'll give it our best shot. Ullmark is more than capable of going into Florida and stealing a game. But then here's the question: then what? I think that's what makes this Boston goaltending situation so interesting. Is like the results base every decision for the next game. Right. So Swayman's been phenomenal. I think if I had to pick a Conn Smythe winner right now, it might be him, in the whole league. But if you have a chance to give Ullmark the start, to give Swayman, 3 days of rest, think about it. They just played a 7-game series. They got 1 day in between before they start this one, which to me is bullshit too, because the Canucks and Oilers don't play until Wednesday. I don't know how the fuck that happened. But if I'm a Bruins fan,
I think it's building availability.
What's going on in what concerts, I guess?
I'm not really sure. I saw Boston just had to reschedule. I think it was a pretty big name artist, but they had to reschedule from the 10th to the 8th, which I thought was kind of funny. But look, I'm starting Swayman in game one, and here's why: because you're not going to win game one, okay? And if you want to have a chance to win, you want to go with the guy who has just stood on his head. And I think you've got all this momentum. If you're Jeremy Swayman, you've barely let anything in the net for the last 5 days. Don't throw him out of his rhythm and not play him. Okay. They had a day off in between. They didn't practice. Leave the guy alone. Let him stay in his rhythm until he loses a game. After that big game 7, I'd play him in game 1. Chances are they're not going to win no matter what. Then all of a sudden, Then all of a sudden he loses, and then you have a reason. All right, now we're going to go to Ullmark. We lost. Okay, we're going to give him the extra rest here. I just think that
because dumb. I feel like that's the opposite.
Because here's the thing: he could steal the game. He could steal game 1 for you. He's playing that good. If he lets up 1 goal against Florida, the Bruins have a pretty damn good chance to win. And so I'm not messing with him when he's playing at this high level until he might have a 4-1 loss. And he could steal it, or it could be 4-1. Okay. It could go either way, obviously, but I'm not taking him out of the net. You just won a game 7 where you let up 1 goal. How are you taking him out of the net? I don't know. I'd much rather them let him keep riding it. Maybe he stands on his head and steals 1. Maybe he doesn't. You can easily go to Ullmark in game 2. That's it. I'm not pulling him after that performance. I'm not doing it.
All right, fair enough. I also need to know who this Ben Benya guy roots for, because he is talking about Ullmark's numbers against Florida. Apparently, Ullmark's beaten. I'm trusting Ben here because Ben's been firing off in the chat. Apparently, Ullmark's beaten Florida more than any other team in the NHL. So,
and let me tell you something. If that's true, coaches love that shit.
That's what Ben is saying, dude. Ben's got a lot of good shit in here.
That matchup.
Ben, who do you root for? I love your comments today. We need you more in here. This is the first time I'm seeing you in the chat. Big shout out to Ben.
Put Olmark in game 1. Hate Boston, but they simply won't go away. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, look, if he's 12-3-1 with a 929 and a 247, I mean, those are great numbers against them. Oh, the Tim McGraw concert got moved, but hey, the Preds can go to that now. Weinberg 85 said that. Yeah, I mean, look, I was unaware of those career numbers. But again, I would let Omar keep. I mean, I'd let Swayman keep going until he gives you a reason to take him out of the net. I'd let him keep going.
Ben's a Ranger.
The guy's been incredible. He's been incredible.
I agree. Also, just some breaking news, Colby, that you're probably interested in. The Devils just signed Seamus Casey to his 3-year entry-level contract.
Okay. Yeah.
I don't know. A little off topic, but
yeah.
Someone we talk about on the show, I feel like every now and then. But yes, so game 1, Florida, Boston, only game on tonight. That should be a fun series. What is your prediction for that one? I don't remember what I submitted, but I'm thinking Florida in 5 right now.
Yeah, I think Florida wins the series in 5.
Oh, you agree?
I think unless Swayman has some sort of insane series, they can push it to 6.
I will make it clear, though, that I'm rooting for Boston because for me, my fandom, I am dying for a Rangers Bruins conference final and Knicks Celtics conference final. I think that'd be fucking awesome. So I'm rooting for Boston. But sorry.
Yeah, look, I'd like to see Boston win the series too, but I just don't think it's realistic. You know, I like to see, like I said, I always like to see guys that I'm tight with win games and win playoff games. And it's one of the reasons that I like the Rangers. I like seeing Vista do well. I like seeing Vinny Trocheck do well. There's a number of guys that are just easy to root for around that organization. You know, I like seeing Chris Drury, who's a BU guy, continue to do well in the GM chair. Although I think Jeff Gorton deserves a lot of credit for what this team looks like. Let's continue to talk Boston, Florida, though, because we got to do our Betway bet of the day. That's obviously an important segment that we always keep. And we've been running this great promotion for the last month or two with Betway. They will give you a free $200 reimbursement if your first bet loses. You can take advantage of that by scanning the QR code on the screen, create an account that'll load up your account. Make your first bet. No matter how much you bet, you'll be reimbursed up to $200 if you lose. The offer is only available outside of Ontario. Please play responsibly as always. I always like to tell you to throw the little parlays together. I saw some big parlays happening on the internet yesterday over series wins of the first round. This one guy bet like $100 plus 300 or 3,600 odds. So did pretty well on that bet because he picked every first round series. So get involved, use Betway, make those bets. For our Betway bet of the day, we're going to go under on 5.5 goals in game 1 between the Bruins and the Florida Panthers. It doesn't seem like it matters. We know Bob's playing in Florida, and whether it's Olmark and his unbelievable numbers or Swayman and his unbelievable play, you got to think this is going to be a tight game. You know, you really do, unless you never know, the Bruins jump on them early, the rest versus rust, and then the game ends up at that, 4-3 type of situation. But I could very easily see this being a 3-2 game or a 3-1 with an empty netter. I think offense is going to be hard to come by for the Boston Bruins in this series. I really do.
I agree. And I actually think it's going to be tough for Florida also. I'm not Florida.
Oh, listen, the Bruins defend well. They really do.
Florida's power play didn't really impress me all that much in round 1. I mean, I know it was fine, but I don't think it was exceptional. And Boston's PK, I mean, they were phenomenal. So, if I'm a Boston fan, I'm feeling pretty confident about my PK right now. So as long as, Boston can kind of hold serve at 5-on-5, Boston's power play did fine in round 1 too, right? Like they scored a couple goals. So,
and here, let me say one other thing, and then I'll let you close the show out here. I hope this series goes 7 games.
Oh my God. Yeah.
I want 7. What I think is going to happen and what I want are different. I want 7 in every series. I think we've got second round hockey is going to be a huge jump from the first round. I didn't think the first round was great. I thought it was okay. Just overall, I thought it was okay. I think we're in for some real treats with Colorado and Dallas, Boston and Florida. New York, Carolina, all the teams that we wanted to see did. And so now we really get to see the best on best of the NHL here over the next 2 weeks. This will be some of the most exciting hockey that we get to see.
Can you believe Shane Bullen in the chat just called me a grown man? Can you believe that?
No. No. All right, look, I'm going to be on DFO Live today with Frank. Actually, I don't know if I'm with Tyler today. I think Frank is traveling. We will have Frank here tomorrow. I know it's been a couple of weeks since we've had him, but we will have him here tomorrow, which I think will be perfect because I think there could be a lot of shit to talk about with the Toronto management and the front offices. And, on TNT last night, they were already saying Berube's already got the job in Toronto. So who knows if that's true. So we'll have Frank tomorrow. Make sure you're here with us tomorrow, 9 a.m. Give us a like and a subscribe on the DFO page. When we do these shows, if you like the shows, it helps bump us up a little bit up the depth chart. And it helps Jonny and I with sponsorships. And again, we say this next year, we've got big plans for this show, being more on the road, being more live. And
moving in with Colby.
Yeah, that's not going to happen.
We're having a studio.
Sponsors pay for that type of stuff. So give us the like, give us the subscribe. Tell your friends. Vic wants to know if he can come too. It just depends.
Me and Vic love bunk beds and Colby's guest room.
You can always come, Vic. Johnny's the one that I worry about. So we'll put Jonny down in the storage room and we'll let it go from there. So Jonny, final word.
I got nothing, man. Great show. Great start to the week. It's going to be a lot of fun. Happy round 2 is underway. We got some great matchups to look forward to. One game tonight, one game to focus on, but we'll see you all tomorrow at 9 a.m. Big thanks to the chat. Big thanks to Vic. And have a great day, everybody.
What's up, hockey fans? If you enjoyed that video, then you need to be hitting the subscribe button right here at Daily Faceoff. Exclusive interviews and analysis from our hockey insider Frank Saravalli, fantasy updates from Brock Sagan, and a daily live show at noon Eastern, Monday through Friday. You don't want to miss any of the fantastic content, so hit that subscribe button.